So there was this meeting, of course, in Calgary. The Calgary City Council met to discuss the proposed municipal conversion therapy ban. And they had their meeting over the last 2 days, I believe.
Yes, it was a very long meeting because there were over 120 people that had registered to call in for a 5-minute presentation and over 1,800 written submissions.
Oh, is that like a record?
It was a record. It was
Yeah.
a provincial record. We don't know if it's a national record yet, but this is a really contentious issue. And as we talk, you're going to hear why it's so contentious.
Right. It's just amazing. I was hearing some reports of what took place. I heard a lot of craziness, a lot of emotion. I heard that there were a lot of harsh words about Christians spoken. I heard there was bullying.
Tremendous.
Yeah. So this was quite surprising, considering this is supposed to be, a sober and serious city council meeting discussing a proposed piece of municipal legislation. So presumably everyone should be kind of cool and calm and collected, but apparently that didn't happen.
So I've been very involved in this since the Edmonton ban was passed. I was there to present from a scientific, in the sense of looking at peer-reviewed research and what I've been studying over the years, because I've been very involved in study regarding same-sex attraction, and then in the last 5 years, gender dysphoria, which is now dubbed transgender. So I have great concerns in this whole area. And so I've been studying for a long time. And then this ban, then we were able to connect with other churches, and Jojo Ruba has been tremendous in being able to work along with Journey Canada in the West, and I've been here in Ontario writing papers. And so anyways, so they're professional research, review research papers, and I'm not going to back down from this fight. Dr. Wells is trying to discredit me, and one of the things that happened, and I would call it bullying for sure, I don't know that it was harsh words, but it was very, the procedure of the council was extraordinarily wrong. What was happening is that Dr. Wells really has written this bill predominantly, and then he has become the resident expert in all things to do with same-sex attraction and gender. So there is no referral to anyone else. And so he was constantly brought in after someone would present, and they would perhaps use some research from another source other than Dr. Wells' sources. The council would call Dr. Wells in to refute their research. It was just it was pretty shocking to see a council do this. There was no open-mindedness in this whole thing. It was just very, very bad. But what happened, and I want to say this, is that after I presented, and I actually presented, I sent 4 different documents to council. So a shortened kind of 4-page short version of my 50-page paper, and then also something on gender dysphoria. But I sent information, scientifically based information into council previously. And so I didn't present on that. I wanted to present on something that I found very encouraging in literature coming out of the US, and Dr. Lee Beckstead, who, along with a team of other LGBTQ people, Christian psychologists, the opposites coming together to produce something called Reconciliation and Growth. And it is so positive because our hearts are for people. And that's where my heart is, and that's why I'm involved. So anyways, going back to my presentation there, which was quite positive, quite honestly, I'm not about conversion therapy. I'm about allowing people the ability to self-determine who they are, who they want to be, and who they want to see and talk to. That's what really is being shut down here. And so after I spoke, then one of the council members literally tried to discredit me because of the just some of the things she said. First of all, she didn't ask anything about anything I presented. She said, "Where'd you go to school?" And I went to Liberty University in the US. Hallelujah. I chose to do that because of the constructionist view in Canadian universities. And quite honestly, it was far more rigorous program than Canada. And then she wondered where I lived. And so all of those kind of things. And so that kind of, you know, was like a wet blanket on everything I said.
Right.
Whatever. But then another council member, Council Earhart, came on after others were had talked, and she said she kind of came back on and she apologized for how the council was really proceeding here, and how bringing Dr. Wells in after people spoke. And so anyways, kudos to her, because this will not be an easy road for her. And she just had texted me later and said, you know, I've seen enough politicians with confirmation bias. And so that was really what, it was a bright light in all of that, I think.
Right.
And so anyways, it was a very interesting time. I know that I was on the line for 8 hours before I spoke. So this is a huge commitment for people.
Yes,
to
sure.
it went over 2 days. So I didn't hear a lot of the other the next day. But yes, there was a lot of bullying, and it's totally unacceptable. This is not how we would ever expect a legislative body of any kind to proceed.
Right, right. Well, as you were mentioning how they were bringing Chris Wells on after people spoke to refute what they were saying. I mean, he's not, you know, you can correct me, but he's not a member of the council, right? He's not part of the city council.
No, he's not. And you know, Dr. Wells has a degree in education. He's not a therapist. He's written some stuff, and his own research is tremendously biased. He doesn't do random samples. And so there's just some really there's some things that we need to start questioning here. And I mean, this is a hard area to research, because people who have had same-sex attraction in the past and decided that they actually wanted to become maybe more settled in a heterosexual behavior or attraction, or they just wanted help with whatever was going on internally, because most people just aren't. It's not about changing for me. It's about helping the person just deal with whatever is going on in their life. And so he doesn't really have experience in that issue. And I'm not someone that has counseled a lot of LGBTQ people. That's just not where I focus my time. Mine has always been on trauma, but and of course there are many that are very traumatized, but for me it's been childhood sexual abuse survivors. So saying all that, I've spent 25 years in front of people listening to their stories, and Dr. Wells doesn't do that in the same sense, any sense of the word. So when we talk about conversion therapy, it's all okay if individuals want to leave heterosexual lifestyles, and I'll say lifestyles, that's the word that's not very good, but an identity or attraction, and move toward more of a bisexual attraction or homosexuality, that's fine.
Right.
But if an individual wants to make a choice to redirect their sexual attractions or to deal with pornography or anything. That's what's being banned.
Right. That's one of the things about this conversion therapy ban, whether at the municipal level or federally or provincially. It's kind of this one-way law. It's written right into the law that it's okay to literally convert one way, but not the other way. And even it supports, of course, not only a heterosexual becoming homosexual, but also someone becoming transgender and undergoing mutilating sex change surgery, hormone therapies, puberty blockers. It allows all these things, which are actually demonstrably harmful, not just in the short term, but in the long term. So these are real harms, and yet it doesn't allow any type of psychological therapy, pastoral counseling, even friendly parental counseling to help someone who's struggling with some feelings to kind of work through that. So it's a very odd thing to me.
It is very odd. And I do want to talk about some of the ramifications, if I can, David, at the end of the two-day meeting. There was a bit more clarity. It came to light when Councillor Kara said that the bylaw absolutely applies to churches, which they had not been, because we had questioned whether this meant anything about prayer or anything, and they kind of were downplaying that, of course. And they said that, yes, the bylaw absolutely applies to churches. And then the range of activities, there's a wide range of activities that can be punished by a $10,000 fine. Right. And I think in my last video, I said 2 to 5 years, and I was getting confused because that actually was from Bill 8. This bylaw says 1 year in jail. But they made it very
clear. Much better.
Yeah, go to jail because you want to help people? Come on here. But the range of activities, so pastoral counseling, especially on any ongoing basis for someone that came to them.
This is wanted counseling. This is not like forced counseling, right?
No. Oh, no. And Dr. Wells, and others were talking about, coercion and trauma, torture and lobotomies. Lobotomies. Okay, I'm sorry, but there are things that haven't been allowed in Canada for decades. So why does he think there is such a need to bring up archaic practices that were practiced perhaps by a very small minority of people? And when we're talking about talk therapy, we're talking about anger management, we're talking about things and cognitive behavioral therapy that someone would want when they came to see a therapist. And sometimes the therapist doesn't even know they're same-sex attracted till session 6, and all of a sudden they say, I've really been struggling with this. And at that point, therapists, what are they going to do? Shut down. I can't help you with that.
Right.
So anyways, so pastoral counseling, yes. Anything like that. Speaking events. So things like I do, right? Because I've been trying to wake up the church for the last 4 years about this. Oh, yeah. And so, and pastors are afraid of me. I'm like, okay, because really? They're afraid, because what will it mean to the church? And I get it. But I'm telling you, what it means to the church now is really scary. So any speaking events where same-sex behavior is called into question, so, and then there's a ban on any kind of advertising, and that would apply to word of mouth. So right. They did acknowledge that would be very hard to prove, but word of mouth. So if someone with same-sex attraction who is married, perhaps in a heterosexual marriage, talks to someone, says, I don't want to have these thoughts. I really want to be in this marriage. They could be charged. The person talking to them could be charged. They could be subject to a fine. And then donations to churches and institutions that support traditional understanding of sexuality could be punished as well. So there you go. Out in the light, finally we're hearing what we've been suspecting for a long time.
Yes,
and they made it.
We've known this for a long time, for sure.
Yeah, and the church doesn't want to face up to it. But they made it clear that excuse me, anything that openly spoke about marriage as being between a man and a woman, and that sex was reserved for that institution, would be subject to this sanction. So here we go. Here we go. This is a ban on free speech. It's a ban on belief. It's a ban on freedom of religion. And so really, that's where we're at.
Yeah, and when I was looking at these proposed bans as they were coming forward, that's one of the things that struck me. This is a real assault on Christianity, the doctrines, the practices of the church. There's, of course, our traditional sexual ethic in Christianity, which has been upheld generally, universally for 2,000 years. And only lately, in the last few decades, has it even been questioned at all. But now it's coming under a direct assault. There's the threat of fines and imprisonment. Of course, the whole it aimed to silence us, to get us to stop talking, to shut us down. So, and the church, like, they need to wake up now. Like, they need to speak up. This is right now affecting us.
We have an opportunity right now, because the church right now, people could be sending letters to the Calgary Council members, and I pray that they would send volumes. I mean, we're not about harming people. We want people to be loved and cared for, and we love and care for people. But the reality is, and I did a video last summer, which I'm going to repost, on equality, normalcy, and superiority of the LGBTQ. And I was talking about James Parker from Australia, who was a formerly gay man. And he said this has been their agenda for decades, to have ultimate superiority, so that no longer would heterosexuality be looked on as the normal expectation or even a normal way of being, that instead it would be LGBT experience. And as you know, the transgender, there's a lot of stuff happening right now with the transgender, and there's a lot of infighting between these groups within the community. And for me, as a therapist and a researcher, when I'm seeing what's coming out with the transgender, and psychologists, thankfully, in the UK are starting, well, 35 have left Tavistock because of what they're saying is these kids kind of being pushed onto puberty blockers and hormones far too soon. And so, yeah, hey, we've been knowing that for quite a while. So finally, people are starting to speak out. So maybe in Canada, we will start coming alive to the realities here. And there's a lot of harmful realities that aren't being cared for in the LGBTQ community. I mean, 1/3 of that community are substance abusers. If that was in the heterosexual communities across Canada, 98% of us, we would be doing something to help them. Right. And we would be identifying, we'd be talking about it, but we don't hear about any of these things. And so we need to be able to really be far more open in talking about what really is happening.
Right. It's just a matter of presenting what is happening, the reality, the facts, and not, no one's trying to harm the community. We're trying to help the community. We want to, facilitate health and wellness and healing and not harm. So what I would think all people of goodwill are about, or should be about.
Well, the whole story out there is that we are haters, we're fearmongers, we're homophobic, we're transphobic. It's all about name calling.
Right.
And really, we need to get way past all of the labels and all of the name calling, and we need to decide to do something that's actually going to help people that want help. And there are reasons people might want to leave the community. Well, guess what? Why should they not be able to? That's the bottom line here. And why should the church be penalized for helping people?
Right, exactly. Helping people who want help, who seek it. I mean, I know individuals who have been in the homosexual lifestyle. I've heard people talk who've been in the transgender lifestyle, and who have, for whatever reason, God has spoken to them, and they have wanted to come out of that, and they have left it. They're deeply scarred people from having gone through various experiences, emotionally, psychologically, mentally, spiritually, come out of it, and they are glad they've come out of it. They're happy. They feel fulfilled. They wouldn't want it any other way. So are those people, their stories, should we ignore them? Or like, why do we erase their stories?
And this is one of the most difficult issues that we have. And several people that called in, it was very hard for them to tell about their stories, but they were so open. And one of the things that has happened is we don't get the stories. There are probably thousands of people across Canada that have dealt with what they would call unwanted same-sex attraction. And like you said, live a very fulfilled life. Some of them may be celibate. Some of them may have married into a heterosexual marriage. Some of them may have gone from extremely, well, I would say 100% homosexual to more of bisexual. Sometimes it's a progression. When someone is dealing with some unwanted thoughts, so let's look at pornography, for instance. It isn't like a snap fix. And it's very interesting because there's this sense that's being put forth that somehow people are going to have a couple sessions of counseling and they're going to be suddenly heterosexual. Well, that's not what we have any expectation of. We know that in any kind of sexual experience, and my son says this too, because it took him, he didn't go to conversion therapy. I was misquoted in the Calgary paper, very misquoted. I think I might have to deal with that. But he never went to conversion therapy. He went for 3 years of therapy, talk therapy, because he was really finding that he was very dissatisfied with where he was in life, and he was dissatisfied with the sexual promiscuousness and his behavior. And now he wouldn't be able to get help with that. So, I mean, it's sad.
Yeah, it is. So what are the next steps now? So the Calgary City Council, they had this meeting, but it's not being finalized yet. Is that right?
This is just the passing of the proposed bylaw. And so now we have till May 25th. Okay. That's when the council votes on this. So this time we have an opportunity. And that's why I really want to speak out to pastors and leaders and say, your church, and it's not just your church, and the bylaw, denominations, because it talks about organizations. So even the denomination can be shut down. Like when you read this bylaw, it's so general. So churches and pastors must become aware of this and stand up now. So now is the time for action. Write letters. And just share your heart about why you think that this shouldn't be happening. And for those who have experienced same-sex attraction at some point or time in their life and no longer experience that, or have chosen, get this, they have chosen a heterosexual lifestyle, a heterosexual behavior. That's what they are are wanting, please speak up now. Please tell your stories. We want to hear from you.
Definitely.
And so, yeah, that's what we need.
Yes, and here at Camping Life, we're putting together a series of videos, video testimonies of people who have chosen to leave the homosexual lifestyle or to leave transgenderism, and we've put together a number of those videos, really powerful, moving, personal testimonies, and we are certainly looking for others who wish to really put their story out there and who would like to do that as well. So
it's wonderful. Thank you, because we need to really get the word out, and if people hear and respond, that is going to count for much.
yes, definitely. And people's personal stories, what they've gone through, what they've experienced, what God's done in their life. I mean, this is not be denied. So I mean, it's hard to hard to speak against personal experience. So, but yeah, I just want to kind of wrap up here. We really appreciate what you've been doing, Dr. Gillies, for your efforts. It's not easy, of course, and I assume you're not getting any huge, financial benefit out of this.
Well, that would be an understatement, but you know what? Yeah, I am.
Can you tell us why you do what you do?
Well, because I've been impacted by the LGBT for over 40 years, and then my eldest son, of course, joined. When he left home, he got very involved in the community, and his story is really interesting as well, because he didn't. He was free in the community, and he expresses himself very freely, but he didn't burn any bridges with us either. And we just continued loving him, and he knew we were praying for him. He had to make his own decisions. He wasn't ready. People have to be ready for whatever decisions they're going to make in life. And so, yeah, so that's one of my reasons. I just, I've seen abuses that are horrific, and so I really want to stand strong against that as well, and love people.
Your heart comes through very clearly, and thank you again for all that you're doing. God bless you.
Bless you, David. Thank you.
Thank you.